Perk, we all had interesting reactions this morning. This is Nikola Jokic in his native Serbia celebrating his new contract, which is the richest contract in NBA history. What do you think?
Hey, Greeny, team whack body. You know what whack body means? It's
What?
a body when you can't get cut up. That's what Team Jokic is. I had a whack body playing. At least he's able to take his shirt off now, Greeny.
He's got 300 million reasons to be dancing right now. He just signed a 6-year, $300 million fully How about the dance moves? You're satisfied with the moves there, Big Perk?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Greeny, it's not my type of swag, but hey, big fella, 7 foot, he doing what he do. You know what I mean? I can't tell him how to celebrate when you got 300 million.
Here's what I can tell you. He's built like you, but he dances like me. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. One way or another, it works for him. All right, with that, we welcome you back to Get Up. We are live, as always, from the Seaport. We are brought to you by...
Comment specifically on any player. You know what this answer is going to be, which is we will always look at any opportunities to make ourselves better, to try to win a championship. And if we thought it was something better to do for the team, we would do it. You know, we have to weigh short-term, long-term, and all that. We have to weigh the financial obligations in both scenarios. But we will do all that and make the decision we feel is best.
All right, so that's what he said. And Steph Curry, of course, was asked about it. And he said the rumor mill and all that stuff is part of the nature of the NBA. You know how quickly things can change, but I like where we're at. Of course, where they're at right now is at the top of the heap. But all those things can change. Oh, there you are, guys. We got Nick Friedel, we got Brian Windhorst, and we are delighted to bring the big fella, Big Perk, into the conversation. And Perk, I actually want to start with you, and that's your former teammate, of course, in Kevin Durant. Before we dive into all the things that would have to happen in order for Kevin Durant to wind up Golden State, I guess I would ask you, should they want them to, which is to say, should the Warriors want to give up basically all of their good young players to bring Durant back, and should Durant want to go back?
Here it is, Greeny. Although Golden State, I believe, have the most assets and young players that would actually attract the Brooklyn Nets to trade Kevin Durant, why should they want KD back? Look, the Golden State Warriors are one of the few teams right now that can still contend and win championships and build for the future with the young core that they have in Kuminga and Moses Moody, James Wiseman, you know, those guys, even Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole. Now, if you're KD, it's nowhere in hell you want to go back to the Warriors. If KD went back to the Warriors, I think it would tarnish his legacy forever. Forever. He cannot go back to the Warriors. Not the team you left that you already had won 2 championships with to go team up with Kyrie Irving, and then it didn't happen, then it didn't work out for you, and all of a sudden you go back and team up with them after they just delivered a championship. His legacy will be tarnished forever. It's nowhere in hell, if I'm Kevin Durant, that I go back to the Golden State Warriors.
It's a fascinating point, because you wouldn't think Durant could pick a worse time to go to Golden State than he did before, but now it might actually be even worse from a legacy standpoint than it was when he joined them after the 73 wins. All of that said, Windy, so Perk is basically saying the Warriors shouldn't want to do it and Durant shouldn't want to do it. Yet the talk doesn't seem to want to go away, and it doesn't feel, to me at least, like it's based in nothing. It doesn't feel like it's rooted in just pure conjecture on people's part. So what gives?
It is not. There have been some discussions within the Warriors organization about it, and with everything Joe Lacob and Steph Curry there, I didn't hear the word no. I didn't hear the word no, and the reason that's interesting is because a year ago, when Ben Simmons was floated as a possible spot for a player that the Warriors would go after, Joe Lacob went on a podcast and said, "We are not interested in Ben Simmons," for which he was fined $50,000, which is why he wouldn't say anyone's name on this podcast. But you didn't hear the word no like you did last year. Now, Do I think it is likely? No, I do not think it is likely. It is difficult because of how much money it would cost. Joe Lacob on this podcast also talked about his concerns over how high the Warriors' salary is getting. Also, the issue is that if you trade Andrew Wiggins, who would have to be involved in this type of deal, he can't be on the roster at the same time as Ben Simmons. So that makes it sticky. But I can't sit here and responsibly tell you that it is impossible.
All right, and so again, I set this up for those who don't know. Fidel, you've been around KD now several years in a row. You covered him at the end of his tenure in Golden State. You've been with him in Brooklyn through all of this. So the idea that KD has to be traded comes from him, right? He's requested a trade. I guess there's a fine line between requested and demanded. One way or another, it appears that's the direction he wants it to go. But you're there in Vegas right now at the Summer League. What does everyone generally expect to happen with KD and when?
They don't expect him in Golden State, Greeny. And I think that's crucial to point out. I've covered that last year in Oakland. And that 3 years, that time had run its course on both sides, with the Warriors and with Kevin. It's not to say it's impossible, because Joe Lacob is one of the most competitive owners in sports. And Steph Curry and Draymond and Klay Thompson badly want to win. But I'd add this for context, and I think it's really important here. I was with the Warriors at the beginning of the season for the first 3 months, and the coaching staff and the front office, they loved two things aside from Steph being awesome. They loved the fact that this team was really deep, and the younger players were coming along, the Kumingas, the Moody's. Wiseman played here last night, and he looked pretty good. But they loved that everybody was on the same page, and there was no drama. And as fantastic of a player as Kevin Durant still is in this league, what's inarguable over these last few years, dating back to his time in Golden State, even at the end of that Thunder tenure, the drama follows Kevin. And when you're that talented, you understand to a point, but they don't need him. And that's the difference right now. The Warriors have what they need in place. They have the young core coming behind Steph, and they don't have to have Kevin to get them over the top the way they needed him a few years ago.
Go ahead, Big Perk.
You're greening. I heard Nick say drama, right? And this comes to my next point. I'm going to repeat this. It's going on about 3 weeks now, and Kevin Durant is still on the market after requesting a trade. This is crazy to me. And I understand, Wendy, you going to come on here and say, well, Perk, with how things work, it takes time. We're talking about Kevin Durant, arguably the best basketball player on the planet. If Michael Jordan, back in the 90s, requested a trade from the Chicago Bulls, do you know he probably would have been traded the next day?
What do you think, Wendy? I mean, that is a point. You were saying earlier that the Nets are not getting the return that they were expecting.
Yeah, Perk, I don't think it has to do with their evaluation of him as a player. I think it has to do with the evaluation of the price. You know, anybody who's buying anything, you want a good price on it, especially if you pay a big cost and then it affects your ability to have Durant on a championship team. I've compared this to buying houses. If you have to sell your house to buy a car, and even if it's a Lamborghini, like Durant is, that defeats the purpose of the trade. So you have teams out there that could trade an incredible package for Durant, but are not championship contenders. Then you have teams that are championship contenders that if they would pay the price that the Nets would ask, wouldn't be championship contenders on the other side of it. So let's just go back, Perk, to the Kawhi Leonard trade. And I realize it's not apples to apples because Kawhi Leonard only had 1 year on his deal and was probably going to walk if he wasn't traded to LA. That trade played out over the course of weeks and weeks and weeks. And ultimately the deal that the Spurs took was the deal that Toronto had that wasn't for what we thought it was going to get traded for. Because the value that they have, that what the teams are offering, is way below what the Nets want. And those teams believe that value will come down and down and down, which is why the Nets have reacted to the market by saying, we're going to keep him, or we're thinking about keeping him. It's all a negotiation at this point. It's not a judgment on Durant, the player. It's a judgment on price.
Go ahead, Perk.
Yeah, but first of all, Greeny, Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant are in two different atmospheres. That's the first thing. The second thing, you know what it goes to show me? how the rest of the league value the young and upcoming stars and superstars, that they're willing not to depart. Because think about this for a second. Kevin Durant is still locked in for another, 4 or 5 years under his contract? So if you are a team and you do decide to trade for him, so what if you don't win it or go for the whole thing next year? You still have Kevin Durant on your roster for the next 4 or 5 years that maybe you could get another star, another package deal to say, you know what, it may take us a year to get what we want. But again, Kevin Durant is still on the market. It makes no sense to me.
Okay, I'm going to leave this here for the moment, but I'm coming back to all of this, and I just want everyone to consider, and we will do this again a little later in the hour, have you all answer the following question. Why wouldn't you just try this one more time if you're the Nets? The best solution, you have Kyrie opted in for 1 year. You're going to get out of this problem in 1 year anyway. You have Durant under contract for 4 more years. You haven't even seen what you could do with Ben Simmons yet. The best solution to me, it seems, and I've been gone 2 weeks, so I'm just finally getting a chance to say this, the best solution is try running it back in Brooklyn and see what might happen. Let's pause on that thought. We'll see if all of you think I'm nuts as we continue